Today on Piggypower, we show you how to stage 1 tune your DTurbo engine and hope it doesn't blow up. So welcome to Piggypower. Stage 1 tune, basically add a little bit of fuel and a little bit of air, make it go a little bit better. With a basic stage 1 tune, you can see an increase between 20, 30 and even 35 horsepower, depending on what modifications you do to the pump. We're just going to show you a very basic modification that you can do, just an adjustment in fuel and boost. There's a number of reasons we're not going any further. Particularly not a great lover of these things. He has a scoop in his bonnet, but with a front mount intercooler we could keep the charge temperatures down. We could do even more modifications to the fuel pump in that case, and maybe a bigger turbo, and then we've got rod problems and then you're down the rabbit hole. But today I'm just going to show you how to just alter the fuel, perhaps alter the throttle if necessary, alter the on-off boost fuel regulator, and adjust boost pressure. You want a little bit more air when you get a bit more fuel. Why should you do this? Because it's free power. That's why you should do this. Okay, I've given it a quick health check. We gave it a, we went out and did a baseline. Haven't got a rolling road, so I've done a baseline video. I'll show you that now. 30 to 70, standard 205 with a 1.9 turbo diesel engine in. 30 to 70 in third. You're back in the room. So basically that's our baseline. We hope to obviously improve on that quite significantly. It does go well already. They're not much body. This is the 205, a bit lighter than the 306. This engine, the 1.9 turbo diesel, known as the DTurbo, even though the DTurbo is a spec, not an engine. You can have an HDI one. This is the 1.9. It's available in the 306, the 406, a load of vans, the ZX, the Zara, loads of stuff. And it's a good direct swap basically into one of these. Gives loads of potential. They're cheap, they're available, easily tunable. So without further ado, let's get into it. I'm going to show you why I know this pump hasn't been messed with. So the most very basic part of this tuning process of a stage 1 tune on a Bosch pump, a Lucas pump, the way you tune those, you remove them, you fit a Bosch. Video up there to show you how to do that. Is this screw here. This is your max fuel screw. Basically this is just going to add fuel at all RPMs effectively. Now I know it's not been modified because we have this security little collar on it. Now you can sort of get it off with pliers, you could use a Dremel, you could use a punch, all sorts of methods. I like to use a sharp punch, give it a gentle tap, split it open and then use a pair of pliers to pull it out the way. Don't hit it too hard, you obviously don't want to damage the screw, the threads or the pump. Right, hopefully you can see in there that we just split open that collar. Just touched one thread, but that's okay. I'm happy with that. And just be gentle with it. You don't need to force this thing off. There we go. Now she's moving. I'm gonna get a pair of pliers and pull that sucker off. This is the anti-tamper that basically came from the factory, so that obviously for warranty issues, etc., people wouldn't be tampering with them because they knew the potential basically of this engine, and could easily outperform some of the more expensive engines to buy. Okay, so now what you need to do is get a 13mm spanner and release that nut there. Okay, so to actually adjust it you need a 13mm spanner of some sort. You could also use a socket, but you need to be able to get to the end of this screw here, which is actually a 5mm. I've got a 5mm socket, or there's a slot in it for a screwdriver, whichever you prefer. But you don't want to move that while you undo the 13mm, basically. Difficult to show you and get access in there, but we're going to try. Okay, so she's moving already. So I'm going to back off that 13mm a little bit so I can wind this in. Now you could do this with engine running so you can hear the note. I'm just going to wind it in a little bit. I would say a turn would be more than enough for a stage 1 tune, but it does depend on the engine and how it feels and how smoky your exhaust becomes. Okay, and then we lock off this. Right, then hopefully with a boost gauge attached, you'll notice the customer has already put his own boost gauge into this line here. You go and check how much boost you're making. Darren Lobb's video guide is really good for this, but I have been requested, he mentions this too, because often you're on wastegate pressure, so your boost will increase anyway. But if it doesn't increase enough, I like to go to about 20 to 22 psi on the stage 1 basic tunes, then you'll need to adjust your turbo. I'll show you now on a separate video how to adjust that. What we have here is the GT15 or the Garrett basically turbo that you might find, and usually there's a pipe between here which I've taken off because we were running a manual boost controller. So your best option, if you have time, is to fit a manual boost controller between these two pipes here, and then you can just control it without having to be down the back of the engine all the time. Otherwise, you can control it using this actuator. Basically, you want to put more tension on the spring inside here, so you undo this lock nut here, it's a 10mm. Just undo that a little bit, a few turns, tighten this up by rotating this little nut here by hand, and then it will increase the tension in that and hold the wastegate shut for longer. If you have the KKK turbo, then I'll just show you now on a diagram how to do that, as I haven't got one available to show you. But basically, you release a nut and wind a screw in. Same principle, you're increasing the tension on the spring here to keep the wastegate shut for longer, thus increasing your boost. Coming out your choo-choo. Turbo, choo-choo. This is the KKK Turbo. From underneath the car, this is how you'll see it. You'll need to get in from the side slightly. Access is restricted under there, to be honest, but you need an 8mm socket to undo the lock nut, 2.5mm Allen key to adjust the actual screw in the middle. You may need to hold the 8mm socket with a pair of pliers, put the Allen key through the middle of the socket so that the lock nut doesn't turn at the same time. Give it about 2 turns, I would suggest, then go and take it down the road, check what your boost pressure's doing. Usually the fuel limits the boost pressure on these little turbos, so don't panic too much if you've put a little bit too much in. But if you need a bit more, wind it in a little bit more. If you want less, wind it out a little bit, and then lock that nut down tight. Boom! So this is the next thing I'd just like to adjust a little bit. We're just going to wind this centre screw out a little bit. Now this adjusts where the fuel goes in, whether it's on boost or off boost. Because we've increased the fuel, you generally find that unless you're very sensitive with the throttle, you get too much fuel low down and it coals a lot. Now that might be your thing, but we're just going to back off this screw a little bit so there's less off boost and all the fuel comes in once boost hits. Boost comes in here, pushes the pin down, tap 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 tap, lots of fuel. Spin, 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 rod, 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 knock, knock, knock. So it's a 13mm and it's a Torx bit in the middle. You hold the Torx bit under the 13mm, wind that out. So we're going to do that now. That probably made no sense at all. Just go watch Darren Lobb's video, for goodness sake. Stop asking me for videos when I know what we've done. So first I just crack off that 13mm like that. Make sure you get the right Torx bit, which I can tell you now is a... Give me a second. There we go. That is a T... something. Oh, hang on, here it is. That's a T25. No doubt those experienced will know that already. And then what I often do is get a 13mm short socket so I can hold this, because as you move that, it'll move the nut on the top as well. So get your 13mm socket on a pair of grips, so you can put it in the middle then, and then you can wind this screw in the middle out. You might need a bit of encouragement initially. There we go. I'm going to wind it a fair bit out, just to allow for less coal off boost. You don't want no fuel off boost because you'll never get things moving, but just a bit less so it's easier controllable. There we go. That should about do the trick. And then try and hold that screw while you do the nut back up so you're not undoing all your hard work, a little bit like the max fuel screw. Okay, final pinch, just make sure it doesn't come loose. Okay, so we've adjusted our on-off fueling in here, we've increased our max fuel down there, and we've adjusted our boost pressure. What I'm now going to check is a couple of things. Idle speed. If the idle speed is increased, there's a screw at the back here with a 10mm lock nut. You just back that off and the throttle will go back further. That will reduce your idle speed, and it increases how much fuel you can give it. The other thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make sure I can get max throttle. So I'm going to stick a brick on the throttle pedal and make sure this pulls all the way until this stop here. So let's do that, shall we? Alright, so that's the throttle mashed into the carpet. And we are at max. So that's good. If you're not, you move this nut here closer in and you'll get more travel, or you can adjust the cable for if there's any slack. With those adjustments now made, we're going to check the idle speed and then we're going to head back out again. A good idle speed, I like it around 800, 825. Some people like them lower, some people like them higher. It also depends if you've got a wax stack connected, which this is connected but not doing much, whether you want that higher or lower. If you're running veg, I tend to go for more of like a 900, 950 idle, just to help in the cold starts in the winters. Now for a slightly more aggressive tune, only ever so slightly, but just to gain a bit of free power here, you take the 4 screws off the top, which often you've got to use a pair of grips and a screwdriver because they're flatheads. Lift this off, there's probably a bit of oil in it, I've cleaned that off already, and just lift this pin out. Now it's good remembering, I marked it where this angle to the left, 90 degrees to the left, in line with the pump it is pointing, and have a look on the actual pin. This is called the LDA pin. There we go. And I found where it was rubbing up and down. You'll see a little line there. You see that? And it wasn't at the most aggressive point. So we're just going to turn it slightly to be slightly more aggressive. Now you can grind these out, but just for a stage 1 tune you don't want to do that. So I'm just turning it about 90 degrees. So I can see where it's rubbed before. I've cleaned it off. I'm just going to turn it so it's going to be here. That's a little bit more fuel in when it's pushed down, but not too aggressive. As I say, you can grind away these, but we're not doing that at this stage. The other little trick, you see right in the middle there, is a little spring. I'm going to just take that out. We're going to just lift this plastic collar out and store it away safely. That basically prevents that pin from dropping all the way down and allowing a little bit more fuel through. I've also just adjusted the wheel inside. I've turned it a couple of clicks backwards. There's some science to that, but basically it increases some preload on that spring, and so when you get boost you don't just drop the pin like it's hot. So, popping that back in place, cleaned it all off. I'm going to put the 4 screws back on, and then I'm going to take it for a test drive. Yay! Okay, so stage 1 tune done. A little bit of tweaking here and there, possibly a little tweak more than a standard stage 1 tune. You know, we haven't just upped the fuel, we've adjusted a few other things. Only minor though. This is a very high mileage engine. It's actually done more miles than this car, and I'm not sure this car can cope with much more before it just falls apart. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a 30 to 70 like we did before. Here we go. Please hold together. Very nice. Okay, stage 1, 205, 0 to 60. Lots of wheel spin in first and second there.